The most dangerous thing in that was obviously like the underwater stuff, because if anything goes wrong, if a line gets caught or if somebody panics, something might happen and they get a coughing fit. And obviously you can't take a big deep breath underwater.
I went behind the scenes of Reacher's stunts with stunt expert Buster Reeves and put him to the test. He rated the most dangerous and challenging action scenes from season 3. In season 3, Reacher infiltrated a gun-running operation, and it built up to the showdown between Alan Ritchson's Reacher and Olivier Richter's character, Paulie.
I wanted to try something different on this one, and I was actually watching the National Geographic program, and I watched two grizzly bears fight, and I was like, what would it look like if a silverback gorilla, Reacher, polar bear, Paulie, and the polar bear just doing big heavy swipes. If it hits you with it, you know you're staying down. So I kind of had that vision in mind when I was choreographing this fight scene.
This sequence took place in so many different locations, in a field, a barn, the ocean. In the barn, Alan Ritchson was hung from the top of the ceiling by a chain.
We had backup lines on backup lines just in case, even though everything we use is up to standard and brand new. But, you know, we had a fake rubber chain, like with a little bit of elastic on it, so it had a little bit of give if you needed to stretch out and have a breather. But also we fed the lines down through the vest into like some stirrups, so he could take all the weight in his feet and he's not getting any type of suspension trauma in the vest, in the thighs where the leg cuffs are. And then we just, you know, we had a separate hoist, so while Paul is lifting him up, we're controlling the pull. So if we need to, we can drop him and he can get out.
To get out of it, Reacher flipped himself upside down and pulled the wooden ceiling down with him.
For the flip upside down, we had separate leg cuffs where we could aid him to like pick himself up, because when you're in a harness, you have no movement. So to flip up, because he's picked high, he would have had a lot more leverage. So we put a second set of lines up that we could lift him and he could curl up and then put the feet on the beam. And then that was it. So, and then we had a special effects device, the hook that would slightly break. So we give the intention that it's going to break any second. And then I think cut out of it and just hear the massive crash.
So once Reacher escapes that, the fight continues off of a cliff and into the ocean. What are the challenges with stunts in the water?
Moving fast to make it look dynamic. You know, everything's slow, so we had to really choreograph and think about the movements. We had to make them swim in a certain direction, but then pull them in a separate direction, like they're both fighting an undercurrent. For what you'll see under there was a lot of lines puppeteering the guys like we had. So if I'm using my screen as the box, like we had lines, picks here, and we had picks there. We also had picks forward and back so that we could move them backwards and forwards, and then we could move them up like undulating in a current. So the safety team had safety divers for all the cameramen. We had safety teams in there for all the actors. There was, I think at one point, there might have been about 16 people in that pool, all had a specific job to do, not just the actors. In terms of danger, because, you know, there's drowning, there's water intake, there's all kinds of stuff going on. The whole thing itself, it's memorizing all the moves, it's making sure camera can capture it so we're not overdoing anything. And with everything being so intricate, the fight being so intricate, the moves, like we're changing levels, like we're hitting the legs, we're hitting the body, we're bringing the head down to pick it back up. So we've got to make sure that camera can follow it so that we're not overexerting the actor to the point where once you get tired, then that's when mistakes happen.
The two categories we'll be rating today on our Stuntometer are degree of difficulty and danger level. So, on a scale of 1 to 100, how difficult was it to create the Reacher versus Paulie sequence?
I'd say about 75.
And just how dangerous?
Probably about 90, because there's drowning, there's water intake, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
From out of the barn and ocean and into the woods, Reacher's being chased by men riding ATVs in the dark of night. With Mother Nature, the lack of light, and moving vehicles, this scene produced many challenges.
There's obviously the most obvious one is you're working in the dark and you've got to light it to the point where it doesn't look like daylight, you know, so the DP did a great job in doing that. And obviously special effects again with the atmosphere and the fog. So you can kind of like smoke and mirrors, so to speak. But again, everything's meticulously planned. All the guys on the ATV, we made sure that their runs were safe and there were no like protruding roots on the tree. I mean, I remember one night I directed a couple of nights on that while the main unit director went off to start something else. And I took a digger because a root was up and I couldn't see it. And I went face first into the deck. So I'm just like, okay, right, let's just make sure we watch out for that. And obviously when the guy gets shot off, we've got to make sure that his ground's prepped. And so we just got to make it look dangerous without it actually being dangerous. And that's the great thing about our industry.
The same technique used in the barn with the chain was also used in the woods with an ATV cable wire.
We fed our own line underneath the ATV and out through the winch and then onto the guy where he was choked. So we could always control the pull. And then when he got there again, we had, elastic is a great invention. So we had a little bit of elastic or rubber so that when it pulled in, it could pull a little bit tight, but also at the back, what you couldn't see is it was extending. So he was never under any great breathing stress or anything like that. He was never in any danger. So when we pulled him in, we're pulling him on his own line, and then we have the dress line going in with him. And then as he pulls in, then we take over with the elastic line, and then he does his dying scene.
So how hard was this scene to shoot? Let's ask Buster and the Stuntometer.
I'd say that was a good 50 to 60%.
And how dangerous?
I'd say that was a good 65%.
The final scene we're going to rate takes place in the confined space of a bathroom. Roberto Montesino's character, Guillermo, fights off a member of the gun runner security team.
In that kind of scenario, we always request for what we call floating walls that we can take out, because you got Ville, who's a big dude, you got the guys fighting, then you've got camera, focus puller, you got a lot of big dudes in a tight space where there's a fight happening. But it was nice because we could really contain the movements in there and make it like you're fighting in a phone box. And it was easy. So if we could make that contained, and then we could move the camera guys around it and stuff like that. So wherever we moved, it was kind of like a continuous dance. If they moved into the mirror that way, camera moved this way. If we moved that way, camera. So we were always trying to fill the space with where the fight went is where the camera guys go. So we were trying to do it that way. So you get a lot of dynamic camera movement and a lot of fight movement.
Now, I know timing is so important, when filming these scenes. Is it even more important in smaller spaces like this?
Oh, 100%, yeah. The bigger the space, the more room for error the camera can move and the guys can move and the camera reacts to it. The smaller the space, the less room for error you have. So again, we warm up the camera guys by like walking it through, so they're anticipating the movement. So they're not reacting to the movement, they're anticipating the movement so that they can catch it. So it was a lot of planning, prep, rehearsal with camera guys, rehearsal with the fight guys, so everybody knows exactly what they're doing on the day.
The cherry on top in this scene was the top of the toilet being broken over the head.
I think if I remember correctly, I think that was like a molded wax top, so it broke like ceramic and not into like 1,000 pieces. It broke into like 3 or 4, I think. Again, this is another fight I haven't seen in its entirety, in its full edit. But yeah, I think it was a smaller, like a softer wax mold that would easily break.
Let's check in to see where this ranks on the Stuntometer in the difficulty category.
I say that'd be 50-50.
And the danger category.
I'd probably say like 30.
So, which season 3 stunt was the most difficult and dangerous to shoot? Well, the Stuntometer crunched the numbers, and with a difficulty score of 75 and a danger factor of 90, the Reacher vs. Pauly showdown is the winner. What's your favorite Reacher stunt? Comment down below, and stay tuned for more exclusive behind-the-scenes insights from your favorite TV shows and films.